This, question mark, this is the Film Rescue Show. This is the show with the biggest ego. We think that we can rewrite all of Hollywood's mistakes. And that's just what we do here. I'm not joined by my other co-host today. This is a first. I'm doing it all by myself. I know you guys said I couldn't, but I could. Devin and Brandon are out, but I've got a highly honored guest on tonight. He is the writer of, I think, my favorite current 4-part series. And I should jump into apologies first, because when I started emailing you to bring you on, I thought it was going to be a 3-parter, and then you dropped another video, and I was like, what am I supposed to do now?
I thought it was going to be a 3-parter too. I'm terrible at that kind of thing. My Justice League video went exactly the same way. Yeah. Especially this one. I started as like a 2-parter, and I just kept wanting to segment it, and yeah, it's nice, but also it's like how many. Eventually I want to talk about something. Like, I have all these other ideas for other stuff, so I'm excited to be done with it because I got other videos coming out on not Superman, but I do have a bunch of we'll get into it, but
for sure.
But yeah, so it has a mind of its own, kind of.
Yeah, so as you can see in here, I'm joined today by Nando from Nando v Movies. I started this podcast about a little over a year ago, and then I got into your channel very shortly thereafter because I wanted to be sure that I wasn't stepping on any toes, and I was like, is anybody else fixing movies? And stumbled onto your channel. I think it was Ego Isn't Ego was the first one that I watched.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, we think alike. I need to get him on someday. I've been following you ever since, and just your ability to really pull a story apart and see how things affect other things later on really grabbed my attention. It's easy to pitch a movie. Anybody can kind of go through the steps and explain how cool a movie would be, but you're able to actually jump in there and kind of look at it almost from all angles. What's your process like when you're, let's say, Man of Steel, when you're tearing apart a movie? What is that like?
It's a good question, because honestly, that's a weird one, because I can't think of when I kind of came up with the specific pieces of that. A lot of the time, it's something that happens almost immediately after I leave the theater. So, I have one coming up that'll probably be up tomorrow, which is Tuesday when we're recording this. So, that'll be on Aquaman, and I remember leaving the theater immediately and thinking, oh, I didn't, completely gel with this decision or this beat, so I wonder, how it could have been done differently. And a lot of the time, all the story justification will come from kind of a feeling, or just you watch the movie and you're like, this didn't quite seem right. And then you can kind of go backwards and go well, why didn't it seem right? And it didn't seem right because of this. And then you take that into a larger context and you go, well, that's actually a strange choice individually, but also when you think about this arc, it doesn't really work. Or at least it's not the way I would go. And I try not to be super, this is all kind of just my, thinking about it. But a lot of it is just a gut reaction after seeing the movie. With Man of Steel, it's a little different because I was kind of working backwards and going all right, I've seen this movie, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
In theaters, and then a couple times since then. But then kind of what things worked about it, and a lot of those weren't things I'd thought about before. But a lot of the times when it's one of the smaller change ones, it's a very kind of immediate leaving the theater, going to get some dinner and talking it over with my girlfriend, and just being like, this part was weird, and this guy kind of was strange. So yeah, it's a lot of instinct, and then have a whiteboard over there where I'll just write over all my thoughts, and then that's pretty much it. By that point, I've pretty much got a skeleton for it or something like that in my head.
Yeah, I'm very similar process, getting kind of the skeleton of the idea together. I use the same term too, and then it's from there it's easy to branch out and figure out what you want to change. Do you think, or have you noticed in making these videos, that most movies can be fixed by a small change, or is it easy to start finding dominoes as you go back through?
That's a good question. I think when I'm thinking about like the small changes, a lot of the times it does start as a very kind of small thing. It's not a big I guess sometimes like with the Black Panther video, it's very much like the stakes of this were the stakes of the whole movie, like this arc didn't completely work, and I think it's because of this moment. But a lot of the times it's just kind of seeing the big picture of it, but starting really small and working backwards.
Yeah.
And I think most videos, I don't think any movie is necessarily perfect, although there are some movies that people have requested I make a video on, and I'm just like, I really don't know. Like
oh yeah,
the first Avengers is a movie that I've thought about for a while, and I'm just like, I don't know, it's so complicated and weird, and I think it more or less works the whole way through. That like I can't think of anything for, I've never thought of anything for that, but a lot of it also comes with kind of time and reading stuff.
Sure.
Like I don't think I had read Extremis, the comic storyline, before I saw Iron Man 3. So then after I read that, I kind of got a bigger perspective for like how that story works really well in the book and kind of what it's missing in the actual movie. And that's the other thing. A lot of it is context based on how things are done traditionally in the comics, and then why a change to that or just something being left out of that makes the comic work a little better than the movie. So a lot of the work's already done for me once I get there.
Have you ever thought about doing a video on like just adaptation as an idea, like why some of these things don't always communicate and why we see the same problems crop up often?
I think I probably could, especially when it comes to villains.
Yeah.
Because like 90% of my videos, it's like the one I'm putting out tomorrow and then the Captain Marvel video that will follow it probably are both about as some sort of issue with the film's villain. And I think a lot of the time Marvel gets in a lot of trouble for kind of making mistakes, and DC, I mean, probably more than Marvel, has a problem with like creating the villains. And I think a lot of the issues stem from the same couple of feelings or couple of like decisions that they're affected by the medium. So like you don't have as much time in an hour and a half or 2 hour long movie to develop a villain that you would in a 5 or 6 issue comic run.
Right.
Or kind of the idea that like in a cinematic universe, this character, this like hero is so precious, and this like Iron Man has to last for this many movies, and Pepper Potts has to last for this many movies, that we can't give the villain something really interesting or like really like devastating to do, because it will take away things we can do in the future. So I think there are big problems, or like not problems, that like issues there that could be addressed that are just keep coming up.
Yeah.
Although thankfully I think they are kind of figuring a couple of things out, like, specifically the villain thing. I think they've more or less gotten a lot of their problems, the problems that were big kind of problems before, that was the Marvel villain problem. I feel like that's more or less sorted out. And I think the DC ones seem to have that too, although we'll see with Shazam and Sylvana or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, Mark Strong is like a fantastic actor, and honestly, the Marvel movies pull in a lot of really, really stellar actors, but it kind of comes up to what they're given to do. If they're not written into the story much, it's hard for them to chew the scenery and establish themselves as being a really big, important villain.
Yeah, it is a tricky spot that they're in sometimes, but I think the thing with the Marvel villains is a poorly, like, not poorly written villain, but like a movie where the villain doesn't get enough time to be like a super fleshed out character. The character can work kind of on charisma alone, which sure. I think is where Marvel gets lucky. So like I think if Hela wasn't kind of as cool looking and as fun, and Cate Blanchett just didn't bring the energy she brought to it, I think she would come off as very one-dimensional and kind of boring. Or like my favorite, Justin Hammer, like he doesn't have a lot to do, and he's not super like he's not the kind of force that like Killmonger is.
Sure.
Where it's like the end of the world and like this guy's super dangerous, but because Sam Rockwell just has room to be fun.
Oh yeah.
You don't leave wanting that much more. But like, I mean, like Mickey Rourke has a lot of style, and I think Whiplash is kind of a mess in that movie. So I guess that doesn't
True.
completely hold true. Yeah, but yeah, I think villains are the toughest part because these movies are just about, a lot of them are about setting up heroes and stuff, and it's really easy to kind of forget about that. But they do have like crazy prestige actors coming in now, so it's like,
Oh yeah.
it'll kind of work no matter what. Like Gyllenhaal in Spider-Man Homecoming or Far From Home is probably going to be amazing
Oh
because
yeah.
he's Jake Gyllenhaal. So and like you were saying, Mark Strong, I love him. I'll watch him in anything.
Oh yeah, for
So,
sure. I mean, even
very excited for him.
even in Ben Mendelsohn in Captain Marvel most recently.
Yep.
Like, I mean, okay, I won't spoil anything, but like he is almost always given the same kind of villain to play, and he got to play that and then some. And I kind of enjoyed that. Like that's a difficult thing to emote with a entire makeup kit on your face essentially.
Yeah, I don't know how they do it. It seems just borderline impossible. But and I think the Marvel characters in general, because of, I don't know, but I don't know what it is, because it's not always the way they're written, because they're written by different people
Right.
all the time. But I feel like his character also gets by a lot on just being charismatic and fun to watch and likable, in a way that some other characters in that movie might not be, without talking too in depth about it. But yeah, I like him a lot in that. And I've always liked Ben Mendelsohn and always felt bad for him because I've never gotten a sense for that the talents have been utilized in like Ready Player One or Rogue One or Robin Hood. So I'm very excited for him.
Do you ever see
or happy for him?
Do you ever see Mississippi Grind?
No, I've seen. I was looking up him actually, and I saw that he wasn't. It's him and who's the other guy in
Ryan
it?
Reynolds. And
Yes,
it's like,
that's right. Yeah.
I mean, because that was actually the first thing I think I remember seeing Ben Mendelsohn in, and just the way he and Ryan play off of each other. And it's like kind of a dramatic comedy, I guess. It's more drama than comedy, but that was the role that I was like, oh, this dude can do stuff. And so I got excited when I saw him getting cast in like every franchise possible. And yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. It's like he hasn't quite been given the role that he could really stretch those acting muscles like that.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I do want to watch that. And I also hear he's great on a show called Bloodline, but I don't really know what that is.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the title alone.
Yeah, I don't know if he's like the bad guy in it, but I know he's in there. I think it's about families. I don't know.
Interesting.
Seems like I feel like it came out at the same time as The Affair, and the posters for them looked very similar, and I could never get a sense of which was which. So right. I guess he's in one of them.
Sure. So shifting gears away from Marvel, the movie we're fixing today, I guess we're not quite fixing a movie as much as we are like totally pitching a new one.
Right.
But we're going to do a sequel to Man of Steel. That's the goal. That's what we want to crank out today. But the question is, where would your perfect sequel to Man of Steel fall in the DCEU lineup?
Yeah, that's a really tricky one. I don't think you necessarily need to do it before a Justice League. I think the problem with the DCEU is Batman v Superman. Spoiler to no one, like, kills him at the end. Yeah. So you don't have really anywhere to go until he's brought back. And I think if you're going to kill him there, which I wouldn't commit to because I think it's a mistake, you can't have him until Justice League. And then it's like so much time has passed and there's so many heroes in that universe that I think that's a huge mistake. I would say if I was thinking about the DCEU as a whole, I think you could, God, I don't know. I would love to just like get rid of Batman v Superman, go Man of Steel, Aquaman, or maybe Man of Steel, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, maybe a Batman movie. I don't think that's completely necessary. Flash, and then Justice League. And then I'd say you could put a Man of Steel sequel after that. But I think it would have been cool, and then this wouldn't work either, to kill Superman in the middle of Justice League. I think that would have been a very interesting way to raise the stakes of that movie, where instead of that they kind of leveled the stakes by bringing him back at the end out of nowhere. But I think you could, so like a lot of it's just not just where would I put him, it's where would I kill him. So if I'm doing that, then Man of Steel 2 would have to come somewhere between like Aquaman and Flash in phase 1. But this only works if you take Batman v Superman out of the equation or destroy it in a very, like, really shift parts of it around. But I think what the direction they take Superman in that movie, Batman v Superman, like, also kind of fundamentally breaks the character, even if he survives the movie.
Sure.
Because he's so disillusioned and so, I don't know, it's just such a weird take that you don't have all this room to run with him. Even though they seem to backtrack on a lot of the things they do in Man of Steel at the very end of it. So it's like, here he is, happy, fun Superman you know and love.
Right.
Just wait, we're going to make another one where he's like cool guy and everything's great and things get worse. But instead they start with a movie where everyone kind of hates him. Or at least that's like the two main characters we're focusing on with Batman and Lex. So
sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I would say you kill Batman v Superman, you make the lineup, and you could throw Suicide Squad in there too. I forgot about that. I make it well, but then you make the lineup Man of Steel, Aquaman, Flash, Wonder Woman, Suicide Squad, Man of Steel 2, Justice League, and then kill Superman in Justice League. I think that would be where I would want him. And I wouldn't make too much of it. It wouldn't be a huge setup for Justice League either. Kind of like how, like movies like Ragnarok feel like setups. Not like setups, but a lot of the weight of the movie is like, okay, so we have to build to, or like Guardians 1 for Infinity War, like we have to introduce Thanos and introduce all the space stuff and introduce this Infinity. I wouldn't really focus on that as much, but I just think it would make sense in phase 1. And I think you could introduce a couple of other characters in this movie that might not be crucial for this, but I think you would have to introduce in a Superman movie, and it wouldn't make sense to do it after he's dead. So yeah, I would put it in phase 1 somewhere.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, so I know, I don't know how long you've had an idea for a pitch for this. I remember writing, I love Superman. He's like by far probably one of my favorite DC heroes. I genuinely enjoyed Man of Steel. Walking out of it, I think I had the goggles on that was preventing me from seeing the issues with it. It took a couple more watches for the stuff to kind of shine through. And then I think the thing that actually kind of broke it for me was seeing somebody on YouTube recut a scene, recolored it, and then added the John Williams score back in. And I was like, oh man, this is so sad, isn't it? Like this does... And then going back through, especially with your 4-part series, like they really don't give Superman like the ability to grow and to make decisions and to establish who he is in an origin movie the way they could have. So then after all that, I wrote my first draft, which was pre-Batman v Superman. And that was like, if I just did a direct follow-up, if I wanted to, just do a direct sequel, changing, giving him more character development, kind of cementing him as, the all-star Boy Scout, making that a growth of character. And then Batman v Superman happened, and I was like, okay, wait, I think I can fix this. I think there's still something here. And my second pitch was going to be like how to bring Superman back. And that's I think the most recent one that I really went through, because then after Justice League I was like, I honestly don't know where to go from there. I'm kind of in the same boat as you, where it's like, does he need his own movie after this? I feel like they've done enough like to just kind of toss his character around but not develop it, that what else could you do that wouldn't either destroy development previously or make it feel tonally inconsistent to everything else. So yeah, I'm kind of stuck in that as well. But I mean, if we're doing a full DCU reset, I'm absolutely down. So yeah, what's your overall pitch? What's the do you have like a 10-word elevator pitch for what the movie would be?
I would say it's hard to explain, not like out of context, but this would be the idea is we're starting where Man of Steel leaves off in this. Superman is really comfortable, and he is not like comfortable, but he's found his place in the world. Let's say Man of Steel got all that right. He's dating Lois Lane. He's working at the planet, and he has a good relationship with the military, and let's say he has a good relationship with the public, even though I wouldn't say Man of Steel really justifies that. My Man of Steel 2, in a world where Batman v Superman doesn't exist, would be like the rise of Lex Luthor and a very kind of a very competent isn't the right word, but like thought out and deliberate plan to destroy every part of Superman. So it would be almost close to, I don't know if you've seen played have you played the Batman Arkham games?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so have you played the one everyone, well, I guess this is the one everyone hates anymore because Arkham Knight had its problems, but did you play Arkham Origins, kind of that?
Yeah. I remember
the
that
one where it's like 8 assassins all trying to get him. That would be kind of this. It would be Lex Luthor has set up some sort of, for a reason that is unknown in the beginning of the movie, although I think you can kind of do whatever you want with it, set up this gauntlet for Superman to kind of, you just take him apart on every level. So that's kind of where that would be my elevator pitch for it.
Okay.
Even though that's a long elevator ride.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, so my thing was, I love the idea of starting from the end of Man of Steel, where essentially it's like if Clark wants to become a public figure, he needs to be using his powers to help rebuild the city. And
right.
Then I guess the overall idea is it's Superman and then Lex Luthor and Brainiac. And Brainiac is kind of a gray character that's functioning as like, not to bring up the Batman Arkham series again, but like the dead Joker conscience that Batman has. I think that's Origins, or not Origins, Arkham Knight.
Yeah, that's right.
Basically a character like that, where as they're rebuilding the city, Lex Luthor is introduced as a good guy, and he's using the Kryptonian tech to like amplify his own nano rebuilding technology. So he's like making. Oh, I guess I should start with the title. The title's Man of Tomorrow, where
that's a good one.
Yeah, and Lex wants to build the city of tomorrow using the Kryptonian tech. He's fronting all the money. He's like presented as this really good guy, and everything he does is like preventing Clark from like shining through as, a real hero in the city. And then the subplot is he's got this AI system that's fusing with the Kryptonian system that's slowly creating Brainiac. Because mine
doesn't have a title, actually. I didn't think about that. I guess mine would be Man of Steel 2. I'll maybe over the course of it, I'll come up with a word that would be like the subheading. But Man of Tomorrow is good, and that's like the, whatever it was. Who wrote that? Whatever Happened in the Man of Tomorrow, like the best Superman comic ever written. So it's like that kind of really memorable thing tied to Superman. Yeah, right. That's a good one.
Yeah. So basically, that's what this podcast is. This is a writer's room. So let's jump into your pitch a little bit more and see where it heads.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that I think is really important about Superman's story that I think obviously I couldn't handle with Man of Steel at all was like Lex Luthor, his relationship to Lex Luthor, and what that kind of reveals, all the insecurities that can reveal about a Superman who thinks he knows who he is. So I think just in building up Lex Luthor can also reveal a lot about the world. It could give Lois Lane's character some room to grow. But I think that the most interesting thing about Superman is we have to make Superman vulnerable in a way that is believable to the audience. So sure. I think you can reasonably look at kind of all of these Superman movies that have existed. Even you could take Batman v Superman out of the question because hypothetically it doesn't exist in this universe. But look at the 4 Christopher Reeve Superman movies, Superman Returns, and Man of Steel, and kind of pick out like, why does this villain work? Why does this storyline work? Why doesn't this movie work? And I think the biggest problem with every Superman movie that's had a big problem is Superman's vulnerability. So I think having a movie where a character who, in my world, ideally would be Lex Luthor. And I think in this story, you would have to not only make it about Lex Luthor, but make whatever the second one of these is the most grounded of the Superman movies,
Okay.
like story-wise. So I wouldn't bring in aliens. I wouldn't bring in like Darkseid or anything like that, or
Doomsday.
just I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't bring in Supergirl, although I think you could do that. I think there is like another pitch for a Superman movie where Superman is just dealing with other aliens coming to Earth, so you could work in Supergirl, Martian Manhunter, maybe like some evil alien, depending on what you want to do there. But so the idea then is we have to come up with a character, or we have to invent a character, a version of a character who is ideally Lex Luthor, who kind of has the competence and the drive to take apart Superman. So I think you would have Lex Luthor deliberately invent a bunch of villains or kind of manipulate Superman to the point where he is, more or less broken down. So I want to introduce a couple of other kind of supplementary Superman characters. And when you look at kind of vulnerability and what's the most important aspect of that with Superman, I think one of the things you have to do at some point in the movie is take Superman's powers away from him.
Okay.
I think Batman v Superman kind of gets at that. Superman 2 gets at that, obviously, with him just, getting powers,
Gets the
his
yips.
powers stripped. Yeah, and I think that's like a really, I think, so I've said this for a while, and I used to want to make a video about this, but now I kind of don't as much. I think the best movie about Superman ever made is The Iron Giant, but I think the best movie that follows a template that I think a Superman movie could pick up immediately and drop into a Superman movie is Disney's Hercules. And one of the things that I think Disney's Hercules does really well is at the beginning of the third act, Hades takes Hercules' power and forces Hercules to solve a problem without his powers to help figure out what is special about Hercules, and which is why in my version of the movie, in my version of Man of Steel, we kind of isolated Superman and Zod in the very end of the movie without their powers. But I think Luthor's like big plan going through the first couple of acts of the movie would be creating a Superman villain called Parasite. I can't remember his name, and I know there's multiple villains in him. Yeah, but I would want Lex is not like Endgame, but his, kind of big arc is to take Superman's power from him somehow. And I think he would kind of know that there is like just a physical way to do that. And then there's also destroying Superman's image, which would be the other main character main villain I would introduce in this movie, which is G. Gordon Godfrey, who is the J. Jonah Jameson of the DC universe, except he's also an alien, which I wouldn't really get into that. But kind of a character who's, it's so stupid. Like, I like the character a lot, and I think when used as just a negative media presence that bothers Superman and kind of is focused on destroying the image of heroes, he's great. But when he's used as like Darkseid's conduit to like, I don't know, I don't even know what he's usually doing in the stories, but I never like that. But Luthor would be using the public, like kind of turning the public opinion away from Superman to the point where Clark is, by the end of the second act, no one likes Clark anymore, and he doesn't have any more powers. So yeah, it would just be really the whole, because I've read I forget what book I read this in, but it was just like the three acts of any movie can be broken down to just the hero goes up a tree, we throw rocks at him, he gets out of the tree. So it would really be just 2 acts of rocks, like just hammering Superman on every front, and then in the third act they would get over it. But yeah, I would focus, like, you would get as much screen time for Lex as you would for Superman here, because of how I think important that is. Yeah, so that's like the more basic, or that's like the high level version of what I think is important to capture in this. I wouldn't bother with the parents. I think you can more or less get rid of them, besides maybe some sort of like moment where he gets, a little bit of advice at some point. And I would also introduce Jimmy Olsen. He's really important for a bunch of reasons, but when you're looking at kind of what Clark's humanity, how that's manifested in the movie, I think that's Jimmy Olsen is the best way to kind of frame that, as like what does Clark do when he's just a guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of that's like the characters I would introduce and how I would use them to kind of corral the movie and the character.
Interesting. Yeah, and it's cool that you say that you want Lois Lane to have a bunch of I guess plot importance, because I was introducing that in my pitch as well. I had a subplot where she and I'm not going to remember his name, Steele, essentially, before he's Steele, are
John Irons.
Yeah,
I
John
think
Irons.
he has a dumb name, John Henry Irons,
Yeah.
like John Henry, the guy who hammered all the railroads
Right.
in American mythology, or whatever his name is. Yeah,
Right.
love DC character names; they're always so fun.
Oh, I know. But yeah, I had a subplot where she was investigating essentially whatever Lex's plan was, and he was linked into it because I had him as like a construction contractor who like worked. He had like thousands of workers underneath of him, and he was the first stop in her finding out what Lex had been, like why he was appearing, why he was trying to hurt Superman's image by making himself look so good, and then they kind of like work together throughout, and then eventually team up towards the end, and that could be a really good introduction for, I guess, him turning into Steel if Superman doesn't have his powers moving into the third act. If he would have to lean on Lois and potentially, Steel to work together as a team to either, whatever, in the comics, I know Parasite pulled powers by like basically draining him of sunlight.
Yeah, I know they've done several. I think Parasite has had at least 2 or 3 versions of him.
Yeah.
And I know some of them have been like that, and some of them he can just, like Rogue, he can just touch a hero and just like steal whatever powers they have from them.
Right.
So I guess a lot of it depends on, is this guy a character, is Parasite a character Lex Luthor has made specifically to drain Superman's powers, or is he supposed to be some sort of general power vacuum for Lex? But I think it makes a little bit more sense, at least in this stage in the game, to have him deliberately be created to steal Clark's or Superman's powers. And I think you touched on something that I think is really I would say the biggest problem with Lois in Man of Steel or Batman v Superman is it's insane that they wrote investigative reporter Lois Lane into a movie with Batman and had Batman do all the stuff Lois Lane should be doing.
Yeah.
Where it's like Batman solving the mystery of Lex Luthor and he's going into, underground cage fighting or whatever. And all they had Lois Lane could like figure to do, and I don't even know how much else made it into the original cut or how much was in the Ultimate Edition, but it's like, yes, that search around for this magic bullet and like
Right.
Luthor metal technology, and like, yeah, if you take Batman out of a movie like that, there's so much space for Lois Lane to do stuff.
Right.
And Lex Luthor has pretty much, if he's in the movie, he's really good at like having some sort of shady company. And yeah, I even think, because I also was thinking about this, you could have Steel be some sort of LexCorp employee who is in like, not a bad guy, but just working and can give Lois like access, especially because the other character that I would have maybe used for something like that would be Hamilton, who at this point in these movies is dead because he explodes in Man of Steel 1.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think Steel is a fun one there, and I just he's a good character that doesn't, I don't know when he'd ever make it into these DCEU movies.
Yeah, I mean, I say that, but then at the same time, like, we got an Aquaman movie with Ocean Master and the Trench, and like, I mean, I think they're becoming aware that they don't have to be afraid to dive deep into the comics and still be able to pull amazing things out. So we could potentially get a Steel someday, because I mean, I hold out hope for like a Superboy movie. I know that's not like maybe like top priority for a lot of people, but that's something that you could very easily make topical right now. You know, you look at Shazam is, I think, going to kind of be investigating fan culture and, living vicariously through your heroes and things like that. I get the feeling those are going to be undertones in the film. If not, they're missing an opportunity to do that. I hold out for those kinds of heroes. So what other? I mean, if you've got Lex Luthor, you've got Parasite, you've got Jeffrey. What was his name?
Oh, so I think the G in his name stands for glorious. So and that's why he's the perfect. It took me a while to realize that his initials are GGG, where J. Jonah Jameson's are JJJ. So he is just, you might as well make it that. G. Gordon Godfrey is usually, or like just Godfrey, or the Glorious Godfrey. There's a million. It kind of depends on how Earth, like how terrestrial you want to make him versus how alien you want to make him. So I would just call him Godfrey or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think what you could do, and what these movies kind of they feel like they have to explain every single villain. And I think if you really lean on Luthor being a smart guy who's like really pulling strings and stuff, and develop him, and then Parasite and Godfrey and other characters that would show up are all generally kind of pawns, then you don't really have to be like, you don't have to say like, okay, so you're throwing 15 villains, and I wouldn't, but like you're throwing 15 villains into this movie. How can you develop all of them? You don't. And if you look at a movie like Guardians of the Galaxy 1, they introduce like 15 named characters. Right. And you can do that if some of them are just pretty simple. Right. So like the problem with Superman is, if I want to, and this is one of the things, like I would want to have at least a couple villains that can challenge Luthor on a physical level, and if you're challenge Clark on a physical level, and if you're doing that and you want to keep it terrestrial, there's not that many because so many of them are aliens. Yeah. So I think I like Livewire from the cartoons, the shock jock who is kind of like electricity powered. Mm-hmm. She exists, and I think she would be a fun villain for Superman. Who else did I have written down here? I forget if Reactron is an alien or not, but he maybe could do it. But I would want 3 physical villains that in this Hercules movie would function as the Titans, or just fun villains that he could beat up. You could maybe swing Metallo, although I think he also could kind of be his own movie.
I agree.
But yeah, like I think having Parasite, Livewire, and I can't remember, not Nuclear Man, Radioactive Man maybe was the other one.
Okay.
There was someone else in there that was like a just, this guy's a Superman villain. He's kind of, everyone will understand him by looking at him, and then you never have to really explain him. And he wouldn't work as a solo movie villain.
Sure.
But yeah, I would just want some general muscle. I'll look up kind of Superman villains. But what about you? Because you have, so how does Brainiac fit into your movie? Because I was trying to figure out kind of where you could kind of go with him.
So my goal was, I guess, to do an origin story for a villain in the back seat of a Superman movie, so that if you had him as an option moving on into the future, where what I wanted to do was create a character. I think I was thinking like Eddie Redmayne or someone like that, who would like physically not be as imposing, but would basically function as Clark's Kryptonian brother. So he obviously like starts his life in a machine, but then would utilize the leftover Kryptonian tech and like maybe like a rescued embryo. And I wanted him to be a precursor to Superboy as well. Again, I'm deep into getting Superboy into the canon. Then I was thinking, essentially he would be working on this plan in the background to introduce himself with a physical body, and then come to Superman with this like, oh hey. Now, keep in mind, my version was being written after Batman v Superman. So the thought was, when Lex communicated with Darkseid or Steppenwolf, whatever version you want to go with, when he did that, it activated this Kryptonian protocol called Brainiac. And what that does is basically it's made to protect any Kryptonian that's in the vicinity from an attack from Darkseid. So he's like at first functioning as Superman's brother and like his outlet back into Kryptonian life, and then eventually, kind of like in a similar twist to iRobot, he would realize that Clark is allied to the Earth now and not to the Kryptonians, and his core programming is to the Kryptonians. And that would kind of twist him against Clark, where it's, you know, if you're not with me, you're against me. But it's a heartbreak because he's a new life form. He's not only learning about how to live, but he looks up to Clark initially, and then he gets hit with basically a betrayal by Clark's decision to protect Earth. And that I wasn't going to have him like be the final boss or, you know, the last fight or anything like that, but just kind of like help initially and then kind of like move into the background and then out and away, so that in a future movie you'd be able to pull him in as like an established like backstory to villain.
Okay. That I can see that working pretty well. And I do think, because that was another thing I was trying to figure out, was like, could you make Brainiac the villain of Man of Steel 2? And I think he is too strong, and not just too strong, but I think he works better when there's more characters to kind of play off him. And because his origin recently has been so tied to Supergirl, I think you kind of have to wait until she's part of things to introduce him as well.
That, and he's so cosmic. Like, it would be difficult to, I guess, depower Superman in a way that wouldn't make him look like comically overpowered in comparison.
Right.
So, no, yeah, I'm way more on board with the Hercules pitch because, I mean, it is a very similar story. And I guess my big question, and I think what a lot of people are going to want to know, is like, how does Superman function as an interesting character and not a pathetic character without his powers on screen? Like, what kind of character attributes do you want to bring to the surface to be like, oh, he's not just strong and can fly. Like, he's obviously an investigative journalist, so he's smart. He's well traveled according to Man of Steel. He's kind of been around the world. I guess take it from there. How would you approach that?
So I think one of the things about Superman that I think the movies almost always take for granted, and the comics do a much better job with, I guess kind of it shifts comic to comic, but I think a lot of this movie would kind of be, I mean, Superman would obviously be kind of like, painfully good. Almost like this, like you could kind of play this a little bit like Winter Soldier, where in this second movie we're kind of tearing down all of the things that support Superman.
Sure.
But also, like, Superman is supposed to be really smart, and I think like once you take away his strength and vulnerability, I think you can still have Superman use like just his intelligence, not as much his reporter skills, but just kind of figuring out ways to fight or like to stop characters like Livewire or Reactron, who I think was the one that I had written before, and I just had to double check to figure out if he was an alien or not, and I'm pretty sure he's not. But getting like these characters, and like I think he would spend most of the movie with powers, which I think for the first act of the movie, almost like a Luke Cage in season 2, although that I haven't finished that. But I know in the beginning it's kind of like he's flying high, everything's going well for him until something big happens that kind of knocks him down a couple of pegs.
Right.
So for a lot of the movie he would have his powers, but as things got worse and like public opinion turns on him and there's kind of too many villains for him to deal with comfortably, maybe like right in the middle at the midpoint of Act 2 he would lose the superpowers. Sure. And then for a while he would kind of be forced to, like, Lois Lane would be figuring out what's going on at LexCorp and what Lex's involvement in all of this is, and then the Superman would be trying to figure out who he is, but also a big part of that would be like, well, how can I beat a character who's living electricity without the power to just punch her really hard? And like, how can I beat a character who is like an energy conduit without... I mean, the problem with Reactron is he's so similar to Livewire. And so many of Superman villains are like, this guy can, suck up all the energy and make Superman really weak. Because I want to say Atomic Skull is kind of similar.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily make him like a scientist like he is sometimes, but I would spend a lot of the movie kind of putting Superman in situations where he has to figure out a way to be Superman without his powers.
Yeah. Partially
just so that he can keep up appearances without having to, show the world that Superman can't be Superman anymore. But also just like, I think the big thing that I would stress there is that besides being good and besides being strong, Superman has other stuff. Like he's got more. There's more to him, and the movies are always just he's really strong or he's really good,
right?
And sometimes inspiring, but I don't think they really get into that except for Superman Returns, which I like a lot, but obviously it doesn't really work in the broad strokes. But I think like that kind of Luthor is what you would want, like someone who really is just like executing plans and being mean and hates Superman,
right?
But besides being a little bit insecure, is more of just like a force of nature.
As you're saying this, I'm getting flashes back to like the old like Superman TV show, like from back, I want to say the 30s or 40s. I think.
Oh yeah.
I think that era really informed another era that gave us one of our greatest depowered heroes or unpowered heroes, Indiana Jones. Like I'm seeing in my head a lot of like, this is kind of a rabbit trail. I have this issue with comic book movies right now where our heroes aren't relatable because they don't react to danger the way like a normal person would, in the way that like if you watch Indiana Jones, he's so relatable because like if he sees something big coming towards him, if he sees a big obstacle, if there's a big issue, he reacts like a person would. Like he's scared for a second, he's surprised or put off or something like that, and that really does a lot to humanize a character. Even just if something's about to fall on you and you have a shocked look for a second, that's all it takes for me to go, yep, that would be me too if a truck was about to fall on me. And that campiness that was brought to life in Indiana Jones stemmed from those old Superman era things. Now, I'm not saying you go full camp. I'm not saying you go full cheese. But I like the idea of maybe even like bringing in some Batman villains that are like, if Superman's A tier, you bring in a C tier villain so that a depowered Superman still has a challenge to go up against. And then he's reacting in like a very real, relatable way that kind of like pulls you in to not just empathize with like what would I do if I had his powers, but what would I do if I could maybe get his powers back eventually, but I had to survive long enough to do it.
Yeah. I'd say, oh man, who's one I'd like, Firefly's not a bad Batman villain who is just kind of a character I wouldn't miss if he was pulled into a Superman movie. Because a lot of the ones with like an actual superpower that aren't just like a clever guy or a mob boss are like, Mr. Freeze, who you'd be like, well, save him for a movie. I'm looking right now at I have all the, because I was so in love with the Lego Batman movie that I have all the Lego Batman characters on like a shelf, and I'm looking at some. I'm like, could you swing Scarecrow? Like maybe could you swing Killer Croc? Like probably. But I think Clayface is a little too strong, but yeah.
Yeah, Clayface is a little. I don't know. I guess it depends on the setting and the set piece too. You know what I mean? Because I could still see like what if he wasn't a giant glob of clay, but maybe like more just a melting, shape shifting, or very Skrull like, I guess, for something like that, or like Victor Zsasz would be a great
sure, yeah,
he's not powered, and that would be could be a fun fight too, because like I guess you're keeping Henry Cavill as your Superman.
Yeah, I like him. I think he's a good actor. I don't think the movies have ever given him a chance at being a good, really, really good version of Superman. But I think with written properly and directed properly, I think he has a shot at being really, really, fun and special.
Yeah, I mean, he's a big dude. So, like, even if he doesn't have powers, if I didn't have powers and maybe just had, a special skill set or, technology or something like that, I would still not want to be punched in the face by him. And that could be like a fun little, playoff you could do there. Yeah, I'm also trying to, like, rack my brain. A lot of this, I think the DC animated movies are just infinitely better than a lot of their live action movies. And so I'm trying to think back through, like, even just the animated show that I watched as a kid, if there's any, like, good Superman, non-alien, non-mega powered, because you can't do, like, Black Adam or anything like that.
Right. Well, if you wanted to steal villains from another character, I think you could really just grab some Flash villains that are probably not going to be used, like Steel Girder. I had a list open that I think was pretty like good, because if I were writing a Flash movie, I would want it to be, I don't know, I guess a lot of my movies, and when I try to, like, kind of come up with cool ones, are a team of characters working together. So, like, I would want the Rogues, which means I would want to keep Boomerang, Trickster, Heatwave, Cold, Top, Mirror Master. I would want to keep them all in play. But that means you could still take, not like Abracadabra, but a lot of the Rogues from the recent Rogues gallery that are kind of new, but also borderline interchangeable. Where was that list? So, like, you could take Blacksmith, you could take, like, Tar Pit, or some of these new ones. Most of these new ones aren't that good. But yeah, just someone like just someone with a simple character or a simple superpower that you can just put into a movie and go, he's a bad guy. His power is he can. I had another one that I really liked. I mean, let's say you wanted to take the top. He's a character. He likes to steal things and do, he's pretty much the Tasmanian devil. Yeah. And just do that. And then, Superman, depowered Superman could try to fight him, and it's pretty, like, simple. It's easy for an audience to track, especially, like, you have a character like Luthor, and even maybe make Parasite like more of a developed character.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
You have all these other ones where it's just like, this is a guy and this is a guy and this is a guy, and Luthor has organized this situation where, like, it's really, really hard for Superman to survive, but you don't really need to know who he's actually fighting. It's just kind of people.
I'm almost seeing like a almost kind of, I don't want to say anime because that may not be the right term, but like, him kind of like gathering people from around the world, interesting characters, and the first time he brings them together to fight Superman, they all get beaten, but then when he's able to depower Superman, you get a rematch where, like, all of these villains now have, like, a bone to pick with a depowered Superman.
Right. Yeah, I totally think that would work. Putting in, like, and I'm trying to think. I'm also trying to think of, like, besides Batman, Arkham Origins, what other things kind of do this well? Like, what other mediums have, or I guess, let me see if I can find something that's actually, like, on my shelf now, though these are all my unread ones. But, like, I feel like they do this in comics frequently.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's just, we're going to, you know what kind of does that? Like Nightfall or Hush, or some of the Batman stories where it's just a Batman villain organizes. Yeah, it organizes a situation where, and in this, like, all the villains are guys Batman already knows, but in this movie, you could just have them be guys, and then, we meet them, and maybe even some of them are established characters that we go, oh, Superman knows who these guys are, and he just fights them, and whatever. Yeah. Like, he's like, oh no, it's Livewire, the woman who can turn into electricity. And I also think when if we're making this right now, there's enough of a visual shorthand where an audience can see a character like Livewire, who is a woman with, like, an electricity symbol on her at some point, And I mean, in the comics, she has like spiked up blue hair, but maybe not that. But she's blue and lightning's flowing out of her, and they could go, oh, that looks like Electro from Amazing Spider-Man 2. I understand what this character, what this character's deal is. Or like Girder shows up and and I forget if he works like this, but he transforms into kind of a steel guy, and you go, oh, that's Colossus from those X-Men movies. I see what this guy is. Like, I think you can take enough from what you can reasonably assume an audience member will just kind of recognize and then build on that, as opposed to having to introduce all these powers, one at a time, which is insane.
Yeah. I think like, especially if you make them, maybe like charismatic, one-dimensional, and then make Parasite, relatable, three-dimensional, and then Lex Luthor could be, kind of more insidious, three-dimensional. Let me ask you this. How did you feel about the characterization of Lex Luthor in Batman v Superman? Because that's where, like, ideologically, he's probably gels the least with it as a movie, but as an idea, I felt there was a lot of meat there.
I think,
and you can disagree with me. Tell me I'm dumb. If you did like him,
I'd love to have seen him played by a different actor, because I think many of the choices Jesse Eisenberg made confused me, and I think I just think that Lex Luthor has a level of like insecurity to me that I think at least Lex Luthor in most settings. So like for 80% of them, I think it's hard because the animated series and a lot of the comics and I'm trying to think, there's another, Kevin Spacey Lex Luthor, I think is a good example of this, is really powerful and really strong, except for these moments where he breaks and he's like, he's just like frustrated. He bangs his hands on the table, or like he's watching Superman on TV and you can see he's just like seething with rage because everyone loves him. I think you would want like, I think the problem with Lex Luthor in those movies is there's scenes like that scene in Batman v Superman where he's giving a toast and he's mumbling about the gods, and he just doesn't seem like a guy that if you were in an elevator with you would be scared of. You would kind of be like, this guy's a little weird. So Kevin Spacey's Kevin Spacey now, and I wouldn't want him back. But I would want to. Yeah, it's so hard with movies with him because like I think his Lex Luthor was my favorite.
It was pretty. And
like everyone says, Bryan Cranston, and he'd probably be good in it. But I would take like a John Hamm, like playing a what the heck's his character's name in Mad Men? Don Draper kind of Lex Luthor, who is just mean and confident, and he can be bald. But just like you see him walking down a hallway in a suit, and you know what I would also want to? I'd want kind of and I think John Hamm could do this too, kind of the cheesy, like almost smarmy, like clearly fake, but enough that it works in his world. Where he can do an interview with Lois Lane and say like, oh, of course I love Superman. He's great, and I hope he does really well. Like, where he can have an intimidating public image if we know he's a bad guy. Like, that's why I think there's a lot of things that he does, and I don't even mind all his weird kind of poetry speak, where he's like talking about like, I don't know, where he's like kind of overacting things, because that's a take I can live with, but I just did not like Jesse Eisenberg in that role.
Yeah, I think a big issue that we've had probably with every Lex Luthor in the film so far is, and I know this isn't a beat you have to do, but it's, I think, still stuck with me because it feels so wrong that it's right. I can't imagine anyone that's played Lex Luthor as the president, and that's like,
right,
that's a big part of his character, especially as as he turns around and like becomes a little more gray, a little less totally bad. That was like, I remember as a kid that was like a weird thing to swallow and be like, wait, he's the bad guy, how's he the president? And John Hamm would be a perfect, oh my god, like I can, that's a great casting.
Another thing I think about Luthor compared to Superman, one of the things I didn't like about Jesse Eisenberg that I just noticed, I think Luthor, for me at least, and even like enjoying Rosenbaum's Luthor in Smallville, I want my Luthor to be a little older than Superman.
Sure.
Like have more of an established persona so that not only is Luthor seeing Superman as an alien that doesn't deserve what he has, but also through that lens that sometimes adults see a young kid and be like, he doesn't like kind of like someone who in Luthor's scenario has worked his way up from nothing, and then see this kind of wonder kid who everyone's like obsessed with, and he's going like, I deserve that. I always expect my at least my Luthor to be 5 years older than my Superman, and I just looked it up. Jesse Eisenberg and Henry Cavill are both born in 1983. It looks like Henry Cavill is 2 or 3 months older than Jesse Eisenberg, but I would never guess that. I would always assume he's older than and I want my Luthor to be tall. I don't know why. That's kind of like that's a little that doesn't need to be like that. But I also I find it like cool if Luthor and Superman are standing next to each other, and there is kind of a contrast, kind of like how Batman and Superman are relatively the same size in Batman v Superman. But that's just me. Can we take a really short break so I can go to the bathroom real quick? It's nice that we're not live, because on live podcasts I'm always like, oh, this is awkward. But I'll be right back.
I have to do another one of these. Except I was told that now I have to do it in video format. Sucks for you, because now you have to look at my fat face. That really, really sucks. Anyway, let's review some movies, I guess. Michael's film get together or whatever. I don't care. I don't care. The first film I saw was Bohemian Rhapsody. I grew up listening to Queen. Wayne's World is the best. The movie is very predictable. Supposed to be a docudrama, and it's a movie. They cut out a lot of his history and a lot of his struggle, which kind of takes away from it. But the sound editing, the sound mixing, the songs, and Rami Malek's absolutely incredible, award-winning performance brings that movie to a level it deserved. I had tears. My tears were not from the script. They were from Rami Malek. It's a 5 out of 10. Rami gets a 50 out of 10. Absolutely amazing performance, and I cannot wait to see that kid do more movies, because he's fucking incredible. Then I saw Overlord. That is the World War II zombie movie. Every time I see it, all I can think about is the video game Wolfenstein. Don't know why. Every single time it comes into my head. Overlord starts out as a war movie, turns into a horror suspense zombie movie. That is absolutely ingenious. It works well, it runs well, the pacing is well done, the acting is fantastic. I'm actually going to have to say this is a good movie. I give it an 8 out of 10. And now we've come to the part where, hey, did we get that sponsor? No sponsors. Why am I doing this then? Where's my money? Where's my cut? Where's my cut? Oh shit, it's live. Okay, fine. Bad movie of the week. Watch fucking Venom. I don't know. It's a movie. You know, if this was 1987, it's a good movie. But because it's 2019, the graphics look like I made them on my fucking computer from 1999 using Windows 98. Looks awful. The voice sounds fucking annoying. Tom Hardy is the best part of this goddamn movie. Everybody else can't fucking act. They even hurt a great Indian actor that I've loved for several movies when they're like, no, let's make him the villain and make him fucking terrible. Not getting paid for this. That was my first mistake. Anyway, watch Venom. Shitty movie of the week, sponsored by my ass, apparently, because no one's gonna fucking sponsor this goddamn thing. Shitty movie scale, it's an 8 out of 10. Real movie scale, it's a 2.5 out of 10. This has been Michael's Film Carnival, whatever. I don't fucking care. I don't get it. Why are we doing this again? Huh? I don't like this. This is dumb. God damn it. Oh, shit.
Yeah, it's interesting you were saying that you like him to be tall, because I think that's something that, as a character, that's something he likes about himself. Like, do you ever think about what characters' self points of view? I think it was in one of the animated movies where he was so proud of, having worked out, and got to the peak of physical perfection, and I think that that's something he's used against other people, because he uses anything he possibly can. So yeah, I'm totally on the same page. I would like a taller, big, imposing Lex Luthor.
Yeah, I think All-Star Superman, I think is the one, the animated movie where he does that, where he's in jail and he's just working out constantly. Yep. And I mean, that's based off the comic from whenever that was that I believe does the same thing. But yeah, I think every version of Luthor I've seen, and Kevin Spacey kind of, although like, I'm trying to think, I feel like Kevin Spacey's Luthor and Brandon Routh's Superman, that movie, don't meet, or like meet super briefly, but like I want it to be clear when they meet that at least Luthor kind of thinks they're equals. And the way you would communicate that would be just like he stands right up next to him and is like, that's me. Like, I'm that guy.
No, yeah, I absolutely love that. I think that your elevator pitch of like, it's Hercules but it's Superman is just tonally spot on. I think and it keeps it, I think it keeps it light enough that you can still really have fun, which is a big thing missing from Man of Steel. Like, him having these powers and not doing anything fun with them is frustrating for me watching a movie. Like, it's something I wanted to see, but you still have the ability to like dip down into those kind of emotional depths of, what would happen if he lost his powers, and would his self-image change? Would he still want to try to be Superman? And you're picking on a plot here that would answer those questions really well, and like further the development along without like repeating anything. In your perfect world, would this be a sequel to your version of Man of Steel?
I think based off of the way I always kind of imagine it, you could put it in either this one or... I like to kind of keep my pitches for movies within the context of the movies, that like, so that you could put it right in the middle and it would be the same. So like... Yeah. Excuse me. You could show this to someone who hasn't seen Justice League, and they could just be like, oh yeah, this fits pretty much the same way. I think you could fit this in either one. The only thing I would change is, or the only thing that I think you would need to do a little bit differently is you would probably need the beats from the Man of Steel rewrite where Superman is clearly a popular public figure. Yeah. Like, you would need a couple of moments that establish him as a guy people like, because I don't think they would earn that in, like, I don't think it's, I think you need to know going into this movie that he's already cool and people like him. Yeah. That's the only big change, though.
Yeah, because that was like, I mean, one of the big takeaways from your rewrite was like just flip-flopping the events of the middle fight and the final fight really kind of like change the beats of character development for him. Even that much, I think, would be a good setup for moving into this one, where it's like, yeah, we now know that this is a Superman that doesn't kill and that is careful to protect civilians. And that's another thing I think would be cool too, if in the first act you made it really obvious that Superman is powerful and goes out of his way to protect people, as he normally does. And then when he's depowered, he's still taking the time to try to protect people.
Right. Yeah, I think the thing that Superman movies always take a shot at and sometimes get right, but I never feel super invested in is like some sort of Superman related sacrifice where it's like in Man of Steel, there's that moment where he's trying to like beat the Black Zero machine or whatever it's called by like flying into its gravity, and like it's a cool scene and it's built pretty well with the score and stuff, but I never get the feeling like, oh, okay, this might kill Superman. He's kind of cool with that. And same thing kind of goes for Man of Steel, where it's like, or not Man of Steel, sorry, Superman Returns, where Superman's on the Kryptonite Mountain and he's getting kicked and stuff, even though that movie probably gets the closest to killing him, without being like Batman v Superman killing him. I think showing him taking his powers away would force that sacrifice to be something that's more tangible, and it would be more relatable, because that's the same kind of sacrifice you or I would deal with in the real world. Yeah, for
sure. Overall, this is like a pretty fantastic pitch that you've put together. I really like the beats that it would go through. Real quick, do you have anything for like, would you make this a trilogy? Do you have a third idea of like what would a final arc for Superman look like if you were to do anything else to him?
So I think you could see, okay, it's tough because I think Mongol would be fun, some kind of war world Superman, but I think it's a lot like Thor and like Ragnarok, and also like I don't need it. I think you could do a like the storyline, like the death and return of Superman. You could do the return of Superman with a live Superman where he's just, because of his popularity and kind of his like success in the world, his like a legacy and kind of a not like, because in Death of Superman or Return of Superman, it's kind of like there's like all these whatever it be, like pretenders and like kind of people trying to take the throne, which I wouldn't want necessarily here, but I think I would want, like, I think Superboy would work, Supergirl, Steel, Martian Manhunter. I would want to introduce some of these characters that are Superman, but something's wrong with them. Like Kara is Superman, but she doesn't fit into the world because she doesn't have the opportunity to grow up on Earth. And John is Superman, but he's really I say John, I mean Martian Manhunter, because then you got the other John. But yeah, John is Superman, but he is super like cynical and depressed because he had to watch his family die on Mars. And then who's the other one? Superboy is Superman, but he's not humble. Right. Although you can write Superboy a million different ways, but like that's, I guess, the version I would do. And then Superman would have to be forced to be more of a mentor. Like the story wouldn't be as much about him, but it would be about how his influence in the world is affecting not like people negatively, but it would I think you would have to have him pass the torch a little bit. But I don't know who I would put as the villain for that. Yeah. I don't think it could be any of like I wouldn't want to do a secret villain. I wouldn't want to do like Cyborg, Superman, or Henshaw. If you did want to put Metallo somewhere, this would be an okay place for him. But then like him fighting Martian Manhunter, I don't think that's all that dangerous. I had that list open. Let me see my list of Superman villains. You could put Lobo wouldn't work there. You could put I don't know. You could put you could do the other Superman story I love that has never even been like, well, they did it in the cartoon movie, but you could do like the Elite and have like Manchester Black as maybe the villain. Oh, okay. So like we have four like challenger Supermen, and they all kind of seem good, but it's like, yeah, Supergirl doesn't fit in. John is really like he can't connect with anybody because of emotional trauma. Superboy is kind of a dick, and Manchester Black is way too extreme. And then like over the course of the movie, Manchester Black would become kind of morph into the villain. And I think he's more or less powerful enough to challenge all of these guys, but I don't know. I think I would, because these first two stories would be a very Superman specific arc, but as you get further into it, movie 3 specifically, I would have him be a really flat arc,
Yeah.
like a Paddington type, just nice character who does good things and just is trying to influence everyone around him. And then if you did the Elite, you would have 4 characters: Manchester Black. Oh God, I can't remember any of their names. Hat. I know there's a guy named Hat. And then the other 2, Blackout maybe, to fight the 4 good guys, which is Superman, Superboy, Martian Manhunter, and Supergirl. So I think that's what I would do. Although I feel like along the way, you'd probably want to make a Supergirl movie on its own. But I've always liked the idea of adding Martian Manhunter to a Superman movie because they're so similar, and I feel like they don't get to spend as much time together as I'd like.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think they're just fun.
Yeah, they definitely play off each other well. I mean, I've always thought that, like, if you were going to do a Justice League movie, that's where you introduce Martian Manhunter. Like, just take an idea straight from the animated movies. Like, and maybe I'm nostalgically looking at that movie. I haven't rewatched the first Justice League feature film, the animated one, but I remember that being like a big part of it. Is like, not only does Martian Manhunter represent like Earth's first contact with like a larger alien race and threat, but he also represents like an ideal for Superman to protect and bring a team around, and not just be the heroes of their cities, but the heroes of and protectors of Earth. Do you think we'll ever get Martian Manhunter on the big screen?
I don't know. I know he's on the Supergirl show and he's relatively well done, or like not super wrong. The way that a lot of these kind of Arrowverse characters start popular and then kind of move in a direction that's weird. But I don't know. And I don't know where they would put him because the Justice League movie seems very I just don't think that's happening anytime soon. There is a comic thing that I think just started, and I don't know what it's called specifically, but it's like the Detectives Club or something. Have you seen any of that? I don't know if you read comics.
Not as religiously as I once did.
So it's definitely not the Detectives Club. It's a detective something, and the idea is there's just so many detectives in DC Comics that it's like, what if they all were together? It's really hard to Google Detective Club DC Comics and not just get DC stuff,
right?
D stands for detective. But yeah, like you've got The Question, Batman, Martian Manhunter, Hawkgirl, Hawkman, Elongated
this
Man.
This is sounding familiar to me now. Now that you said The Question, because that's like, that character does not pop up often.
Right. And I think there's enough good detectives that you could maybe make a movie about one of them and slip John into that. But I don't know. Okay, so I have a list of DC Comics detectives. Wait, there's a bazillion of them, so forget that. But yeah, I think maybe you wouldn't want to make, not you wouldn't want to, but I doubt you'd make an Elongated Man movie. So I guess maybe, you wouldn't be terrible in a Batman movie. But I would want like a more, oh wait, what's the group he's in that's like the West Coast Avengers? Justice Society. You can make a Justice Society movie. Yeah. And even, isn't he, I might be wrong about this. If he's in The Outsiders, you could throw him in there. But yeah, put like, Atom Smasher, Martian Manhunter, Stargirl, and just make them do something together and pretend like you could do a Justice League movie where it's like the movie, the Justice League movie they made. Because a lot of the criticism of that movie is like, they didn't introduce the characters well. And of course you have to introduce these characters separately before you put them together. And I don't think that's true.
Either, yeah.
I think they just made a bunch of other mistakes. And it looks like if you went backwards and were like, well, if they had done it differently, it probably wouldn't have turned out the way that it did. But like, again, like Guardians of the Galaxy, I think you could take 5 characters, just shove them in a room together. And as long as they're well written, you could do that. And then I think that would be your Justice Society. So I guess that's where I would put him. I think that could be
that
fun.
would be super interesting. Nando, would you like to plug anything before I feel like we're going to go off on another...
Yes, absolutely. So I have a bunch of things that I like. I mean, I'll stick to the main ones, and then the rest of them kind of splinter off from that. But obviously, I have a YouTube channel, Nando V Movies, which is where my content that most people see exists. So it's where I do my videos that are a small change to stuff, and it's where I do my rewrites and just other musings. So I don't know exactly when this will air, but I'll have an Aquaman video out like tomorrow or the next day, which will be like Tuesday of March, like the 12th. I have a Captain Marvel video after that I'm really excited for. And then, just you can go there. It's youtube.com/NandoVMovies. I have a podcast called Mostly Nitpicking. It's where me and my co-host DJ do a pop culture kind of recap thing. But the idea of it is kind of like, there's a lot of other podcasts where they just we're just going to, for the entire movie, talk about Captain Marvel. But the idea here is we're going into a little bit more of like the minutia of it. So like, what is the Star Force and what's their, as we learn about them in the movie, what do they do? Or like, what is S.H.I.E.L.D. in this movie? Not necessarily to like tear the movie down, but just to examine some of these smaller things. And then sometimes you can use those smaller things to learn more about the movie or kind of examine some of the mistakes the movie makes or something like that.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, so like have you seen Captain Marvel?
I did just see it the other week.
I think it takes shots at like a lot, those two concepts specifically. Like I think diving more into S.H.I.E.L.D. or diving more into the Star Force would have given us more of an opportunity for like the movie to breathe and to introduce some sort of normal world that we could set the movie in, as opposed to this kind of road movie where I don't think you ever really get enough time to sit somewhere and just absorb it. But anyway, small stuff like that. Like we've done like Deadpool's time travel. How does that work? And like, isn't that weird? But anyway, so that's something you can listen to it wherever you listen to podcasts. We're at NitpickingPod on Twitter. Besides that, I have a subreddit, Nando V Movies, and a Discord that's Nando V Movies, a Letterboxd account where I put my reviews for movies. I would say those are the big ones. Oh, I have, let me see, open this up. Yeah, like I have on my channel, I think there's a link to it, but I know just if you were to look for it, I have shirts. So this is my Rhodey, probably a scroll shirt. You could buy if you wanted. And then the other one is I have stickers on Redbubble that are different just because I like the way Redbubble makes stickers more. So it's like a different place. Sure. But like I have one that I made about how Orm should be the king of Atlantis, like a little bumper sticker that Patrick Wilson liked once. So that is probably the thing that it would be most known for.
What a claim to fame.
Yeah, that's where those show up. It's I'm happy he enjoyed it. And I the more I watch that movie, the more I enjoy his performance. So I am totally cool with like, supporting that character. So yeah, those are the big ones. And then I'm at Nando V Movies on Twitter, which is like, because I'd say most creators are egomaniacs to some extent. I tweet constantly and I'm constantly checking it, to see what people say about things that I say. So that's a good place to find me. Oh, and a Patreon, that too.
Oh, the important one where you get money.
Right. Basically, if you think about a thing and you're like, I wonder what his thing is there, just search Nando V Movies on that thing and you'll find me. And I'm on most things. And I have a Twitch that I never use. But yeah, those are the big ones. Yeah, those are all the plugs. It's everything. If I think of something else, I'll mention it.
Perfect.
But just got so many small things that I can never remember all of them.
Oh my god, I know exactly what you mean. I was doing my due diligence before we got on and was looking, and you even have a Facebook page.
Oh god, yeah, that thing is. I think I pretend to be taking a moral stance against Facebook because I do believe it is bad, but I just forget to do it, and I think that can more or less die.
Yeah, I've noticed with a lot of the creators that I've worked with that like most people have given up on Facebook at this point. I mean, it's basically like memes if you even curate the page at all.
Yeah.
It's a little sad, but I guess that's the death of that white whale. So on your mostly nitpicking podcast, I don't want you to, you don't have to reiterate anything, but I am curious to find out what you thought about Captain Marvel.
Sure. Well, we actually haven't talked about it yet. We're going to do that episode tomorrow because we give ourselves a couple days to watch it. And we give other people some time to watch it too. And it's nice. This one, it's made more money than a lot of the movies, like when we do like Skyscraper, no one sees that. So it doesn't matter how long we wait. But with this, it's like everyone's seen it. So we can pretty much talk about it as much as we want.
Yeah. This podcast will be up a week from the 13th, so I guess the 20th. So that'll give people enough time to have at least seen or be familiar with, and we don't even have to spill into spoiler territory if we don't want to. I guess I'm just curious as to what are your takes on it. Like I saw you tweet that you basically agreed with High Top's take on it. It's not great, but that doesn't mean it's bad.
Yeah, it's so tough. I don't mind it, and I'm happy that it exists, kind of. But I just feel like having seen the movie a couple times now, saw it twice, and I saw it the first time before I'd read any reviews or anything like that. So I feel like I got a sense for how I really feel about it. I'm just so not whatever, but I just feel so fine. I think the problem I think the big problem is the writing and the directing just don't feel like a lot of these Marvel movies. But also, you go back and you look at the team behind them. Not to say they did a bad job, but I just think there's such strange choices for a movie like this. They don't have any genre experience. They're they don't direct all that many movies at all. And I'm watching it. I'm thinking well, what? Why were they the guys? Why, when you get James Gunn for Guardians, he's not a guy that directs superhero. It's not like getting Zack Snyder, who had just finished Watchmen, to do Superman, but it is kind of James Gunn's a logical next step is some sort of goofy, character piece, but they're superheroes. But with this, I'm I don't know, I don't know what they were looking for and why this team was the team. And I think a lot of the comedy beats didn't hit for me. I think a lot of the action beats didn't hit for me. And that's why I'm interested to see how she works with a different director, with specifically with the Russos who saved Doctor Strange. I don't know. It really hasn't left a huge impression on me though. And that's just kind of where I am. I don't know. What did you think about it? What are your thoughts?
Okay, I mean, everyone's saying it, and I don't want to be a broken record. This is obviously should have come out during Phase 1 for many reasons, but I think the big reason is it feels like a Phase 1 movie. It doesn't. I know a lot of people were let down that it did almost nothing for Endgame, except for the post-credit scene. The amount of things that this does to set up anything in Endgame besides her character, it really doesn't, and it doesn't have to, but especially since she was gone this whole time, from the 90s until Endgame, it could have come out in Phase 1 and not changed anything, and it would have fit along better with those movies. They did. I think I know why they were picked as the directing team, and part of this is a very cynical answer, and part of this is a very uplifting answer. I'll go cynical first because I like to end on good things. I think they were picked, and I think a lot of Phase 3 directors were picked because they were having the James Gunn issues, they were having the Edgar Wright issues. I think Marvel knows they need specific tones and voices to deliver the character movies, but they also need directors that they can, for lack of a better term, boss around. That say you can't do this, you can't try that, you can't do these things. you have free reign otherwise, but like there are very specific things that we don't want you to do. And we've seen that happen a couple times with a couple of these movies. And like Iron Man 3 was I think the one where they let a big director do what he wanted, and the audience didn't react well at first, and so they got real scared real quick. And that's where you get these, Taika Waititi's, who has done nothing but good things, but like has never handled something like a Thor Ragnarok. And
right,
a lot of these movies are prevised initially, and so your director. A director could come in and be like, hey, I don't want to do that. Let's do something else. And they're like, let's do the previs that we've done already. So I think they're able to throw their weight around at these kind of directors. But on the flip side, I think a good reason for them, this pair specifically to be brought in, was they nailed not only like how to visualize the 90s in a movie, but like how to do a 90s story. And I think that is maybe the biggest triumph of the movie, is like it feels like a late 80s, early 90s science fiction thriller. Like there was even beats where like it felt almost like E.T. to me, where I was like, oh, okay, I see what tone, I see what flavor you were going for, and they delivered on it really well in those parts. But then just the action, a lot of that's previs, a lot of that's not even those directors at all. And that is where, like,
right.
A Thor Ragnarok, Taika Waititi really shines through, with him kind of taking control over that stuff to insert the comedy into those kinds of scenes. Like Hulk falling out of the ship was probably almost all previs. But,
sure.
Turning it into a joke and having him not transform, that kind of stuff feels like a director injection. I guess...
Yeah, and I think like just editing too, like getting the timing on that stuff right is so small, and not small, but it's like such a precise thing that I think from a big studio perspective, you can say, I want them to have a car ride and I want them to make these 5 jokes, but you can not mess them up, but you can get them, they can be so differently received based off of such small decisions that like, it is really hard to say exactly why something didn't work when there are so many moving parts. And I think a lot of the timing on a lot of these jokes was kind of off. Like, okay, there's a bit specifically, and I don't want to spoil it, but like there's a bit where you think a thing is somewhere and then it turns out it's not there. It's actually somewhere else. And that is a surprise to a character, right? And the way that bit lands in the movie, there is a line where the character realizes it, followed by a joke from another character, where the way I'm seeing that, the joke should come first, followed by the realization, because the joke doesn't work after that. And it's hard to explain without knowing the line, but there's bits like that where, like, Batman v Superman does the same, not like the same thing, but like, they take jokes that are written a specific way and rewrite them, and it doesn't work. Like Batman v Superman specifically has the line, Wonder Woman shows up for the first time, and this will, I'll put this on my tombstone because it kills me. Wonder Woman shows up for the first time. Superman says, "Is she with you?" And then Batman says, "I thought she was with you." That's never how that joke works. The joke goes, Superman says, "Who's she?" Batman takes a pause and says, I thought she was with you, right? Like the joke anticipated itself by making the first line the response, but it's just small things like that I think are why in a movie like Ragnarok with a comedy director, or Guardians with James Gunn, or the Infinity War with the Russo brothers, those are the hardest things to get right. And if you have a director who knows how to get those performances and to hit that timing, it's a million times more effective. And I think that's why a lot of the times when the non-comedy directors come into this, they seem to have so much trouble. And it is like anybody can frame a shot. It's hard to get a very nice emotional performance out of a regular actor, but they get these great actors who, like Brie Larson, can play like traumatized and sad and stuff like that with her eyes closed because she's pro, and like Robert Downey Jr. and all these guys. So it's the comedy stuff that's really hard, and I think that's one of my big problems with Captain Marvel, because there's times when the Skrull, Talos, the Skrull leader, is funny, and he really works, and I want to see that translated to the other beats, like the bit in the car where she's like, Fury's like, so you're a Skrull, or Skrull, so you're a Kree, and you're a race of noble warriors, and she cuts in noble warrior heroes, right? But the delivery on that line is a little soft, and it's so easy to see how that line could have worked, that I think if you put that in the hands of the Russo brothers, who, did Community for seasons and like no good comedy, that would have been fine.
Arrested Development before that, like they're seasoned on not only like large cast, but getting the jokes down and the beats down. Because like I remember in the theater, every joke Sam Jackson had killed. Like, and now I'm in Baltimore, so like I live in a city that is like almost predominantly black. So like some of these things are just culturally going to sit better, and anything Sam Jackson says is going to be funny. All of his lines were killing.
And also he's just a funny, like he's a pro at being a funny guy, and like it's not what he's known for, but like in a movie like Pulp Fiction, which is like some of his earliest work, he's good at taking serious energy and finding like comedy in it, or like breaking up what would be a pretty flat scene where he's just yelling at a guy and making the delivery really like have a lot of layers, so it's funny, and then it's scary, and then he's shooting the guy, but it's still funny, and that stuff is like
hard. Yeah, it's super difficult.
He's just really good at that. Yeah, he's a really skilled actor.
Yeah,
but not everybody has that naturally, which isn't saying any actors are bad, but it's just a skill. It's like some people, Tom Holland can do a backflip, and Nick Fury or Sam Jackson can't. But it'd be weird if you made Sam Jackson try to do a backflip on his own, because he can't do it.
That totally makes sense. I think the thing that is really not sitting well with me about it is nothing really stand out about it as I leave the theater. Like every Marvel movie I think so far, even Dark World, had like one thing where like as I leave I go, that was really good, that's sticking with me. Like for instance with Thor Dark World, Kat Dennings' character, some of her jokes in the final act are just too funny. And that's how I left. I left remembering that movie as a comedy, and I'm rewatching it for a rewrite right now, and like, it's got the same issues as Captain Marvel, where like there's all these jokes in it, but they just, if they're not being delivered by the right kinds of person, they're just falling so flat, which is extra funny with Chris Hemsworth, who is genuinely hilarious in Ragnarok, but then in Dark World it's like, did you just edit him out weird, or was it written funny, or is like, why is he so much funnier in the other one when he's got like on paper very similar lines in both kinds of movies? Like the delivery is different because it's more off the cuff in Ragnarok, it's a little more improvisational, but like the actual jokes, quips, and lines on paper look almost identical. So yeah, it's like it's either in the performance or in the editing or in the delivery, and if any one of those things mess up, you get a really flat, just try hard. I think that's my issue, is like if a joke doesn't land in a Marvel movie, it's not just flat, it's almost try hard, where it's like, okay, yeah, I get it, I'm supposed to laugh, like to play the laugh track for me, you know what I mean? It's done all but that.
Yeah, and I would say, speaking of theater reactions, I could tell, like, the first time I saw it, it was, like, in a smaller setting, so it was hard to judge how that audience was reacting compared to how a bigger audience that was, like, a real, excited comic book audience would feel about it. But there were a lot of jokes that I was just like, that's a joke, but no one seems to be reacting to it. And then, like, I saw it in the real, big audience, and those jokes still didn't get reactions. So it's not that it's not that I didn't find it funny. It is that like there were moments that I was like, they were trying something and they didn't quite get it. And I do think you can compare some of that to like Ant-Man and the Wasp, which is also going for a lot of humor, but it's not quite Ragnarok where the humor is super like goofy. And I think you can see the same thing where it's like that was a joke that was written okay, but there's just something about the way it's delivered that it's not connecting. Do you have a different director in mind or a different team in mind that you'd like, oh, I think he or she should have really handled this?
That is a great question. So I think like overall, actually, was this another Scott Feely? Was he the guy that wrote Captain Marvel? I don't even know actually. Or did the director
I don't know either.
write it as well? Let's take a look.
Well, there's 6 writing credits on it. 2 of them are the directors. There's 2 directors, but I can never tell how much they actually wrote versus whether they got the acting credit, or the writing credit. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I don't know how any of that works, but I know there's 3 people credited as screenwriters that are not that are not Fleck or Bowden. So I'm opening that up now. Yeah, so it's oh no, I guess that's not true. It's Fleck, Bowden. So Anna Bowden and Ryan Fleck are the 2 directors, and then someone else, Geneva Robertson Dwowret, who wrote only this and Tomb Raider, another movie that's like fine. Yeah. Like it's just, if you look at all those pieces together, I'm like, yeah, I just don't see how they thought this was going to go this way. Yeah. Like, these guys don't direct that much stuff. They directed a couple episodes of Billions, a couple episodes of The Affair, that Mississippi Grind movie, which you do like, so there's something, but not all that much else. And it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know. I would have liked a more established director, but I feel like after Taika Waititi, they should have known, like, you know what, maybe we can't just let someone that we trust do what they want.
You would think, as I'm thinking about like the aspects of the movie, I genuinely would have enjoyed like a J.J. Abrams take on it, especially if like all he's doing is just setting up more mystery boxes for the rest of the MCU to unpackage. Like that's where I probably would have thrived. He's obviously good at space stuff because Star Trek looks great, and his Star Wars movie I liked a lot. I don't know. It's weird. I can never predict where people fall on The Force Awakens, but I was a genuine fan. So yeah, J.J. Abrams' version of this could have been really great. His jokes tend to work well because he writes them in the action, so they give you're already like anticipating something, and then the joke kind of like drops in I guess a little heavier than it would in a standard dialogue scene or something like that. His movies are very like frenetic and moving, and that helps jokes a lot. Jokes work better in a wide than they do in a tight. He has a good awareness for that. I'm trying to think of like maybe a smaller director that I'd like to see come in and do it.
I'm trying to think of like some TV shows that are really like kind of where you could pull someone like the Russos out of it and be like, well, this guy knows. I don't know who directs Veep, but I love Veep, and I think that could be funny. Like I've never even Googled who this person would even be, but Daniel Mandel, is that the guy who does all of them? There's a guy that's like, no, it looks like this guy has written some Curb and some Veep, and it seems like he's directed some. Like, I think you could just do that. Find a show that's really funny and just pull that writer and director out and see what they can do.
Some Curb style humor could have worked really great in this, because she's not quite fish out of water. Like she used to be from Earth, and she's uncovering stuff. Maybe
a lot of it depends on I think she is kind of a blank slate in this movie, so you can really do whatever you want. Just pick a director or a writer and be like, you can write characters that are like this, so let's have her be this. Let's have her be super real and relaxed and casual, and set her up against this energy coming from Fury that's very serious and kind of sarcastic. I think if I were if I were redoing this, I've always wanted the Wachowskis to direct some sort of superhero movie. I loved Speed Racer, but I also love all the other stuff. But I don't know if they'd be perfect for this. Although I haven't seen Jupiter Ascending, so who knows? Maybe that's great. I don't know why. I'm sure this was a conversation at some point, and maybe he didn't want to do it, or they couldn't afford him. But I feel like the quintessential two 90s directors are Tarantino, who would never do it, and Kevin Smith. And I would love to see Kevin Smith's shot at this, because I feel like he could get that very 90s-y dialogue out, and he gets superheroes. Like when he directs episodes of The Flash or whatever, they're good. So I don't see why not just try that.
The season 3 episode that he did where the Flash was like revisiting the death of his mother to try to stop it. That one.
Yep. Runaway Dinosaur. That's him.
Me. That was so good. See, the issue with Kevin Smith is like, I would genuinely throw him at any franchise because he is a fan and a director, but his attitude towards movies tends to throw like big franchises off, because if you look at like his last two, Yoga Hosers and Tusk. He's making movies just to try stuff. You know what I mean? Like, and I enjoy them because I enjoy his style of comedy a lot. But I never would go like, oh, you should love Tusk. Like, I get why people don't like it, and I know that scares these big industries to be like, oh, this guy will just do stuff even if he isn't even confident it'll do well. I don't know how I feel about that. Right. So I think that's why it's easy for him to get a TV show, because it's like, well, you can't really mess up. We know what the next episode is, and we know what the last episode was. So you gotta bridge the gap. I mean, I would always be down though. Like his take on Captain Marvel, maybe even bringing in like an actual like female director duo or solo direct.
Well, that's why the Wachowskis are
that's true.
Perfect. Yeah. Like the other one that I think maybe she doesn't do the comedy. Not like maybe she doesn't do the comedy, but like, oh, hold on 1 second. Oh wait, never mind. I'm way back on this text. Someone just texted me, is there one post-credit scene in Captain Marvel? And I'm sure I should be being like, no, there's a second one. But this person just definitely finished it. I was going to say the other director, if we're just looking at female directors, and I think for that perspective, it's important, and it worked so well with Patty Jenkins and Wonder Woman that I don't see why not try to get another female director to hit those beats right, or at least portray that point of view properly. I don't think she's necessarily known for like this interpersonal comedy stuff, but just as a fun action director. And I think a lot of genre fans love Lexi Alexander from Punisher Warzone. I don't know why I mean she's quite outspoken, and like I know why she wouldn't be. She's another one where like I could see studios being like, she's not going to do exactly what we want, so she's not our perfect choice. But I would love to see her shot at Captain Marvel.
That would have been a brutal movie. Like even if it was dialed back to PG-13, just like her approach to action, which I again is a big issue that I had with Captain Marvel, specifically the final fight in the ship. It was just like, this is a mess. Like, right. I'm sure you guys filmed some cool stuff, but I can't see it right now.
Yeah, and even like the stuff like, Punisher's a different kind of thing. Like, it's a different animal where Punisher is just shooting everybody with everything and blowing up everything, and like that's not exactly how Captain Marvel works. But I think there's definitely a version of that. Like, the Star Force seemingly in this movie is supposed to be like some sort of superhero Black Ops team that goes planet to planet and kills. So like, let's see them not just fighting waves of dudes, but like, killing a bunch of Skrulls in a base, and like being, this is the swords guy, and here's a really cool sword action set piece, and this is the guy that's really strong. Like I could see that going really well. And then everything but the very end, where like just Carol is at full power and being super Captain Marvel. Like, I wouldn't say that's right up Lexi Alexander's alley, but a lot of the stuff that happens in this movie happens before she gets all of her powers. So those fight scenes should be very kind of visceral and just would be fun. It would be something different. Like, I would walk out of the theater remembering that. I
guarantee you, the specifically the end of this movie, that when she goes full binary, that was all previs. Like, that was probably almost done by the time that they had, Brie Larson signed that they could use her likeness. Like, all that kind of stuff, I would not be afraid. Again, like, and Marvel's good at that stuff. Their second unit directors and stuff like that are normally pretty good, sometimes great, sometimes they're real stinky, but you could definitely pull somebody with those kind of sensibilities in. And then if you're just giving them like a thriller, Black Ops, it's basically like Jason Bourne in space and then he becomes Superman.
Right. That's the other one. Get the Jason Bourne guy. Get that director.
Daniel Greengrass.
Yeah,
Paul
or
Greengrass.
Paul.
There
is
you
it?
go. I don't know why I was thinking of D.
Yeah, that's right. Get someone like him, and like, there's so many directors where it's like these guys do an action movie like this, like Greengrass does a movie about a guy who doesn't have a memory and beats up people in a room, and that's cool, and like he's awesome at that. Or like oh god, what's the name of the guy who made Independence Day?
I know who you mean.
That guy who blows up buildings in every
Emmerich.
movie for no reason.
Yeah.
Roland Emmerich. Yeah. And to just take whatever that director's strengths are and lean into that. So like if we're taking Kevin Smith, you're going to take a lot of the Star Force-y stuff out and make the movie a lot about, alien paranoia, like this, who's a Skrull and who's not, and people just walking around talking. If you get Lexi Alexander, maybe take some of the alien paranoia stuff out and put a lot of it into the Star Force and like really develop that side of Carol. Like, or Roland Emmerich, like just make it a big giant alien set piece movie. I don't know. Maybe he's not the best choice, but like
he's not a terrible choice for her power set too, especially if she unlocks her powers earlier on or has them the entire time. That he would be the kind of guy that could make that look cool, not just like, Man of Steel destruction for destruction porn's sake, but like just actually cool ideas. Like for some reason, the dude just like loves good architecture and he knows how to use it as like an object. Those could all. Yeah, I love all of these. All of these are great versions of this. They make it less bland. I think that's the issue. It's just a little bland, and it makes it fine. Like, it's totally watchable. If it came on TV, I would never turn it off. But man, it's just fine.
Yeah, like you watch like Avengers 1, which I had kind of held up as the unfixable movie, but I do think it's really good. But you walk out of that really having a sense for like the quippiness, and the back and forth is super Joss Whedon-y, and like you couldn't have gotten that movie from anyone else. Same with Captain America First Avenger. Like, that's a Joe Johnston like Rocketeer style thriller. Get Brad Bird. I don't know. There's other actors or there's other directors that can make a movie similar to what they wanted and not exactly the same as this, but like there will be something really different about it. Like, I'm trying to think of other directors that were making hit after hit in the 90s, and like you can't get Spielberg, but like someone else who's like,
if you're gonna lean into the Starfleet side of things, Steven Soderbergh could do a good ensemble fun.
I love him.
I do too. I will watch anything that man makes. Have
you watched his new thing, the one that's like about basketball? I forget what it's called. It's on Netflix. He shot it with an iPhone.
Really?
It's pretty good. Yeah, he made it. It's like a secret thing. I'll never remember what it's called. It's like some really boring name.
Interesting.
But yeah.
No, I'll have to look at that. Because didn't he do Unsane with an iPhone too?
Oh, maybe. This might not be his only one he's done, but he definitely did. Oh man, let me Google it. It's like something fly. What's it called? He's got a lot of stuff in the pipe. Wow, he has a lot of. What is it called? I want director. High Flying Bird. So that came out this year, and yeah, it's about a basketball agent who's trying to keep things together in a lockout, and it's interesting, but it is like a kind of movie, like it's its own thing, and you could definitely take him and put him in this like position, and then get a cool movie out of it. Like,
oh yeah, he would.
I don't know,
just knock out a Marvel movie. Oh my god, especially if you give him the right characters. Not to say, I mean, I'm on the hashtag rehire James Gunn boat, but Soderbergh would not be a bad idea to bring in for Galaxy 3.
Yeah, I would love him in that. I would love a Galaxy 3 by Wachowskis too, because I feel like they need a bigger kind of space to work in. And like a lot of people, like when you say I want a female director, the default is like Catherine Bigelow, who would be good for this, and she's good in a lot of like like Zero Dark 30 is good, but people forget she directed Point Break, which is like another quintessential 90s buddy kind of cop movie, not like buddy cop, but that could be great.
God, yeah, absolutely.
There's just so many. Like, I'd love James Cameron, but he's too big for this.
I mean, he's so big that he passed his passion product off to Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah.
So that says a lot. It's funny you said Brad Bird. I really hope they save him for MCU Fantastic Four.
Fantastic Four.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes, that is all I need in my life. Is because he could basically just do The Incredibles again, and I will pay. I will pay for 2 tickets. Like, I would be so into that. I could honestly pitch directors and good superheroes for them all day, but I think this is a good place to wrap it up.
Yeah.
So Nando V Movies on Twitter, YouTube, Patreon. You have Mostly Nitpicking the podcast on anywhere you can listen to podcasts. You said you also have a Letterbox, a Reddit.
Yeah.
There was something. Discord. Someone needs to explain Discord to me.
channel.
I have not quite figured it out.
So, when people were kind of pitching this to me, every so often someone will in the comments of my video be like, "You should make you should make a Letterboxd account." And I'll be like, "Okay," and then I'll look it up and be like, "Oh, this is just a place where you aggregate reviews." Cool. I get what those are. With this, it was like, you should make a Discord channel. I'm like, oh, Discord is something that I use to communicate one-on-one with people I play video games with. So that's not what this is, right? No. It's like a discussion board. And I'm like, okay. And then I started making it, and I still don't completely get how someone uses it on a day-to-day, but it's fine. Yeah. It's a fun little thing. I think a lot of the things I would get from a Discord, I get from Reddit. So like just like message boardiness, which is why I just default to that. But Discord is cool. And the Discord community, the Nando V Movies Discord community is great, and I love them so much. But I just don't automatically go there for like my content in
Discord's
everyday
like
life.
live updates too, right? Because I had thought about incorporating that while I was doing the podcast live at a certain point.
A lot of people do, and I believe they have that function now. They didn't used to have video, but then they added that. So I think you could do that. Some people do live YouTube streams. I was on the Lonely Chemist podcast pretty recently, and he does that, and I think that works pretty well as well. But I just don't trust myself to do any of that. Like the technical limitations of what I can do, I am at the ceiling of that. Like, I need to learn more skills in general, but when it comes to like trying to do something like that, I
thought you were about to do a Skillshare sponsorship there for a second.
Oh my gosh! Well, just hold on. Yeah, hold on to your hats, guys.
No, I feel that for sure. But I'm like, I can figure most things out if I get to play around with them, but like, I also have a degree of like professionality I want to bring out, and I don't want to be like, hey guys, I think I'm figuring out Discord, and just like fart around on it until I actually do.
Right. The nice thing about Discord is if you if you make a community and you have people that understand Discord, they will like, they can help you a lot. Whereas like, well, I guess the subreddit is kind of the same thing, but because there's not as much customization there, you can kind of be like, well, I'll make the subreddit and kind of, you know, deal with it on my own. But with this, it's kind of like, I need moderators to do it, but I have competent, like really competent ones, so they do a lot of the hard work stuff. So it's not as hard as it seems, but it is an interesting thing to just look at from a distance and be like, well, what is that? Like,
yeah, it's one of those weird, like, I'm sure it'll become even more important on the internet in the future, but as of right now, it's just it's too much for my little brain. I think that's a good place to end it. Nando, thank you so much for coming on, dude. Like, I really, really appreciate it. I had a great time. Your pitch was...
Well, thank you so much, Seth. It was a lot of fun. I hope that if someone steals this entire pitch and makes a movie about it, part of me will be happy because it will just be a good Superman movie that I can enjoy in a theater. Obviously, part of me will be, sour that I don't get millions of dollars for writing it, but... You know, you got to make sacrifices sometimes. I have
expressed that same sentiment before. I'm like 50-50. Like, if they just took it word for word and did it, I would just love to see my imagination on screen. But, you know, also, you know, pay me. Right.
Pay me millions of dollars. Yeah, like, I'll take it, and then and then everybody wins. But yeah, no, any Superman movie, anything like what we've talked about would be
I would be geeked.
Cool.
That would be so great. All right, man, that's going to wrap up the Film Rescue Show. You can follow us at Film Rescue Show on, I think, basically everything. And now we're on YouTube, The Film Rescue Show. Thank you for listening. This has been Seth and Nando V Movies, and we rescued Man of Steel 2, or pitched Man of Steel 2. Did we rescue Batman v Superman? Did we delete Batman v Superman?
Perhaps, yeah. We rescued it, but it needed to be saved from itself. Like that's where it really ended.
All right. Thank you, man, and have a good night.